Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're venturing into the soundscape of a really fascinating place, a natural reserve, just packed with ecological and, well, historical significance too.
hmm
We've got this collection of audio recordings, think guided tours, briefings, that kind of thing, all focused on what makes this specific area so unique.
Exactly. And these recordings, they give us a view from, different angles. We're going to try and piece together how it's managed, the plants and animals, some quite unusual ones, the whole water situation.
Which sounds complex.
It is. And even what it's like for visitors, the guidelines they need to follow.
Okay, let's get into it then. Our mission basically is to pull out the most interesting bits from these recordings, lay it all out for you so you get a clear picture of why this place is special and, what it takes to protect it.
Right. So what's the story here? Let's dive in.
Maybe the best place to start is just how the reserve is laid out, how they control access.
Good idea. The recordings make it clear there's a zoning system in place.
Yeah, I picked that up too. 3 zones, it sounds like. There's a public area, probably where most people go.
Uh-huh. The general visit spot.
Then something called the hidden reserve, which sounds much more restricted,
Definitely. And finally, a closed reserve.
which straight away tells you, okay, different levels of sensitivity, right?
Absolutely. And that hidden reserve, it's interesting how strict the access is. You need a special permit, the recordings say, and even an actual key.
A physical key, wow.
Yeah. It really underlines that they're trying to keep human impact way, way down in that area. It's quite different from, your average national park. Makes you think about how effective that kind of separation is long term.
For sure. And the rules inside that hidden bit are, well, intense. No smoking, no eating,
No toilets.
right, no facilities, and definitely no touching or taking anything. It's all about minimum disturbance. Take photos, leave nothing else.
Exactly, which points to just how fragile they consider that ecosystem to be. Even small things could apparently mess it up.
And the closed reserve, that's completely off limits, sounds like, just for research. And importantly, protecting the animals living there.
Suggests there might be some vulnerable species needing that extra shield.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
The recordings also mention entrances, an eastern one and a western one.
Yeah. Which probably affects how you get to different zones and how they manage the flow of people.
And this detail about knowing the quickest way out that really jumped out at me, especially in a fenced area.
Safety first.
Totally. They specifically mentioned the risk of fire and having an escape plan. Head north towards the fence, aiming for something called the 68 line.
Yes, the 68 line. It's identified as a water line. So in a fire, that line acts as a guide, pointing you towards safety. It shows they've really thought through emergency procedures.
A vital bit of info for anyone there. Okay, so shifting to visitor guidelines more broadly, it seems like sticking to the rules is a really big deal.
Oh, absolutely. It's hammered home in the recordings. It's for safety, yes, but also just fundamental to preserving the place.
And for that special area, which sounds like the hidden reserve again.
This seems to be the same thing, yeah.
Right. Access there is even tighter. There's a registry you have to be on. And they update it regularly, like every 2 years or so.
And you need ID to get in. It's almost like joining an exclusive club, but for nature.
It really is. And timing is key, too. Turn up late for your slot. You might just be turned away.
Suggests they run a tight ship, schedule-wise, probably to minimize disturbance again.
And group size is limited, too. Only one group at a time in the hidden area. Max 50 people.
That's pretty controlled. Really reinforces the idea of limiting the human footprint.
What about the gate for this special area?
Ah, yes, that has to be kept locked. Locked after you go in, locked after you come out, and someone has to be physically responsible for the gate while the group is moving around.
Like a 2-person job almost. One guides, one handles the gate.
Seems like it, to make sure nobody gets left behind or wanders in when they shouldn't. Safety and security.
And inside that special area, the basic rules still apply. Stay on the path.
No eating, no smoking.
Don't mess with the plants or animals. Leave it as you found it.
And interestingly, you're explicitly told not to go in the water there.
Wonder why. Maybe the water life is super sensitive. Or maybe it's just not safe.
Could be either, or
Yeah.
both. The recordings also give out a local phone number, separate from the main office number you'd find in a brochure.
Oh, like a direct line for emergencies on site.
Exactly. Good thinking in a place like that, where you might need help quickly.
Okay, let's switch focus a bit. Water management. This reserve is near the Dead Sea, which, as everyone knows, has its own major environmental issues.
Right. And what's really interesting is how actively they're managing water within the reserve itself. They're building dams, apparently, to stop water flowing out towards the Dead Sea.
And using pumps to redirect it.
Yeah, pumping it back towards where the springs originate.
That sounds like a constant battle, though, especially because the recordings say the springs themselves are actually moving, migrating.
It does sound like a temporary fix, a way to keep the water where the ecosystem needs it now. It's a dynamic situation.
Apparently, the eastern part of the reserve used to have a lot more water. There was a lake. Now it's just a small pond.
Shows how things are changing hydrologically.
And some springs are these fault springs linked to the Dead Sea Rift.
That's right, bringing up hot water, minerals, including sulfur, which gives that distinctive smell.
Ah, that smell.
Yeah. This water comes from deep down along that big geological fault line. It really shapes the local environment.
And speaking of the Dead Sea itself, the recordings mention the water level dropping fast, like a meter a year.
Roughly 1 meter per year, yeah. It's staggering. And that has knock-on effects, not just ecologically, but for tourism too. The beaches are literally getting further away.
They mentioned Kalia using go-karts to get people down to the water.
Yeah, that really paints a picture of the practical problems caused by the receding shoreline, adapting to a changing landscape.
Okay, let's talk plants, specifically date palms. The recordings call them the original superfood.
And you can see why, nutritionally.
But what's really cool is how you grow them. You can't just plant a date stone, a seed.
Nope. Doesn't work like that for getting fruit-bearing trees, apparently. They propagate them from offshoots, little baby palms that sprout near the base or sometimes higher up.
And those offshoots, especially the ones at ground level, are really valuable, like potentially thousands of dollars.
That's what the recordings suggest. It shows how much effort goes into keeping specific, high-quality genetic lines going in this tough environment. It's where ecology meets economics, really.
And pollination isn't left to chance either. It's very hands-on.
Very. They collect pollen from the male trees. You can tell them by their closed pods.
Okay.
Mix it with talcum powder, irradiate it.
Irradiate it. Why?
It's actually a standard technique in controlled pollination.
Yeah.
Helps manage the pollen viability, maybe prevents spreading fungus or something. Then they use a machine, like a hand-cranked blower, to dust the female trees when their pods open.
Wow. Though nature still plays a part, right? Wind, insects.
Sure, they still contribute, and they plant strategically, usually 1 male tree for every 7 females, and they try to put the male upwind, using nature to help.
Even pruning follows a rule 9 and 3.
Yeah.
Something about not messing up the flowering.
Yeah, the 9 and 3 rule sounds like it relates to how many leaves, or maybe which position of leaves, you leave on the tree. Balancing enough leaves for energy, but not blocking the flowers or fruit. Everything seems carefully considered.
They mention specific date types, too. Medjool.
Medjool, Deglanor, and Hyani are the main ones mentioned. And the Arava region gets them harvested earliest, often around Ramadan.
Which makes them more valuable.
Exactly, because dates are important for breaking the fast during Ramadan. So timing the harvest links agriculture, culture, and economics.
And this little historical tidbit, the name Palmer, might come from crusaders bringing palm trees back.
Isn't that fascinating? A little link back through history shows how long these trees have been significant in the region.
Right, okay, so beyond the palms, what about the creatures living there?
Ah, yes, the fauna. It's not just plants. The recordings mention fish, like amnon, which they call the mother of fish.
Yeah, because it carries its young in its mouth, right?
Exactly. Plus crabs, snails, different kinds of birds.
But the fish are a bit of a puzzle, aren't they? How do they even get into these pools?
Well, there are theories. Maybe bird eggs stuck to birds' feet? Or maybe fish swam up from the Jordan River during floods, when there might be a layer of less salty water on top?
Or maybe someone just put them there ages ago.
That's also suggested as a possibility. It kind of highlights how ecosystems aren't always straightforward, how things get there can be complex.
And jewel beetles on tamarisk trees.
Yeah, laying eggs inside the branches. You can actually see the little holes where the larvae, the caterpillars, eventually chew their way out.
A whole little world happening right there on a tree branch.
It really sounds like even the small parts of this ecosystem they talk about are incredibly rich and connected. Makes you realize why protecting the whole thing, even the tiny bits, is so important.
Okay, now there's also talk about Dead Sea bathing guidelines. This sounds like it's for the public beaches, probably separate from the actual reserve area we've been discussing.
That seems right. An important distinction because the rules inside the reserve are way stricter.
But the Dead Sea itself, it's famous for floating, but it needs care too.
Definitely. That super high salt and mineral content means specific safety rules.
Like don't go in with cuts. Or after shaving. You say within 12 hours. Ouch.
Yeah, that would sting. And take off your jewelry, leave it back at the hotel. The minerals can damage it. Sensible advice.
And the big one, absolutely do not put your face underwater.
Critically important. They really stress this. If you swallow that water, it's incredibly dangerous because of the salt and chemicals. You could actually drown even though you float. Panic, swallow water. It's a real risk.
So even though you float, you still need to know how to swim, basically.
Still need basic swimming skills and awareness, yes.
Got it. Okay, what about the general tourism side of things?
Well, the Dead Sea being the lowest point on Earth below sea level, that's a huge draw in itself. It's unusual, something people want to see. They even have a designated spot for photos, apparently with camels sometime.
The classic photo op.
Catering to the tourist experience. And it helps that the area is relatively close to Jerusalem.
How close?
About 40, maybe 50 minutes drive, traffic depending. Much easier than heading further south for a Dead Sea dip if you're based in the city.
Makes it an easy day trip, I guess.
And it sounds quite developed for tourism. You can book private events on the beaches, even rent out a whole beach if you pay the fee.
Entrance fees usually include a towel. You can get packages with the mud.
Right, the famous Dead Sea mud. And showers are available at different levels near the beaches. It's all set up.
And a little inside info for tour guides.
Ah, yeah, a little perk. Bring a group that spends money at the pub, maybe you get a free drink.
Happens everywhere, right? Incentivizing the guides to bring business.
Just part of the local tourism economy.
Well, that was quite the tour through those recordings. A really detailed picture. So pulling it all together, what are the main things that stick out?
For me, it's really that constant balancing act. You've got this unique, fragile, natural place, and you've got people wanting to see it, experience it, and you have the huge challenge of the changing environment, especially the Dead Sea.
Yeah, that tension between access and protection comes through so strongly. The zones, the permits, the incredibly strict rules in the hidden part.
And the active water management, the dams, the pumps, fighting against the environmental changes.
Absolutely. And then there's just the sheer wonder of the life there. The date palms, how they're cultivated with such specific knowledge.
That whole pollination process.
Right. And the mystery of the fish, the little jewel beetles. It's a place full of unique biology.
And all those guidelines, whether for the reserve or the Dead Sea beaches, they really drive home the responsibility involved in visiting and managing a place like this. Conservation isn't just a policy on paper. It seems baked into how things are run.
So, thinking ahead, with the Dead Sea level continuing to drop and the constant effort needed just to maintain the reserve's current state, what kind of long-term answers might be needed? How do you keep a place like this alive?
That's the big question, isn't it?
And how do you make tourism work alongside conservation? Can they truly coexist effectively when the environment is so sensitive? It leaves you wondering about the future for these kinds of precious spots.
It really does. This glimpse highlights those ongoing struggles preserving our natural heritage in a world that's always changing and figuring out how we fit into that picture sustainably. Lots to think about.